So the story goes something like this. Once upon a time, there was an actor reading for a part in a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And when it was his turn to come out on the stage and do his scene with the reader, he brought out to use as his audition side the Riverside Shakespeare, which, if you don't know what this is, it's a collection of all of Shakespeare's plays and sonnets. It's about the size and weight of a phone book, and the print is just as small. Anyway, so he's reading from the scene, and at one point during the audition, he accidentally sneezes, and some pages get turned. And when he looks down again to pick up his line in the scene, he realizes he's reading for a character in Richard II. Needless to say, by the time he went back and found his place in A Midsummer Night's Dream, he totally lost the thread of what he wanted to do in the audition, and he'd basically blown it. You know, actors spend so much time preparing for an audition, learning their lines, making character choices, trying to block the scene, how they're going to work with the reader, work with the chair, picking the right headshot, getting your resume together, doing research on the director and that theater, that it's easy to forget about preparing something as seemingly unimportant as your audition sides. But let me tell you, having your sides in the right format can make all the difference in the world when something goes wrong on stage. So we're going to cover three things today. The first is how to prepare your sides when you're working with a known work or a published work, like, say, a Shakespeare play. The second would be preparing your sides when you have to go to a casting office and get them and then do them on the day, like if you're auditioning for a film or a TV show. And finally, just a couple of do's and don'ts in general about working with your audition sides. Okay? So, let's get started. But before I jump into it, I thought I'd give you a short history lesson into the etymology of the word sides. It actually dates back to Shakespeare's time. Back then, paper was pretty expensive, as was the cost of having someone write out by hand several full manuscripts of the play for the whole company to work from. So what they did is they would only copy out from the master manuscript just that actor's lines and entrance and exit cues. Right? It would be their side of the conversation. They did this, of course, to save money, but also as a security measure. They didn't want to have a full copy of the play fall into a rival theater company's hands for them to go off to their city and produce their version of the play. They were pretty sneaky back then. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, Sean, I would never bring the Riverside Shakespeare to an audition. That's just silly. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a copy of Midsummer Night's Dream. Well, that's good, but there's still some problems in my opinion. First of all, once again, the type's pretty small, so if you actually have to refer to it, you may have to hold it right up to your face, and no one can see you act if you're doing this the whole time. Also, there's extraneous notes in here, and you're only going to be reading from just a few pages in the script. Now, of course, you'll want the script to do your research from, but not to perform with. What you want to do is take the text that you're going to be reading from and create a document. Type it all out, lay out all the lines in the scene, then convert that into a font that you can easily read, like Arial or Tahoma or Helvetica, and then increase the font size so it's extremely easy to read. And also highlight your lines, print it out, staple the corner, and you're going to end up with something like this. This is the Demetrius, I love thee not, therefore pursue me not scene, right? Well now, if I'm reading for Demetrius, I can hold it at arm's length and still easily read the text. It's nice and big, my lines are highlighted, and I'm good to go. Now, one more thing to consider is you might want to print out at least 2, if not more, copies of the script to work with. 1 or 2 of them are going to get eaten up in your rehearsal process. They're going to get crumpled up and written on, and you might lose a page here or there. And that's okay. It's good to have a fresh, clean copy on the day of the audition to bring with you, right? That way you can put all your notes nice and neat on that text, and you're good to go. One last thing. I always like to put some kind of a stiffener behind my text so that when I'm holding the paper, it doesn't get all wrinkled and rumpled and curved. It's going to be harder to read that way. What I use, I can use like a plastic folder. I've even used a manila envelope at one time. But my favorite is just a regular old writing tablet with a cardboard back. And what I do is I take some paper clips and I take the last page and I paper clip it on to the stiffener, right, the piece of cardboard. And that way when I'm on stage, it's nice and flat and solid, and I can hold on to something, the cardboard, to keep it easily readable, okay? So I can turn the page and it's all nice and flat. So what do you do if you are auditioning for a TV or film project and you're not going to have access to the sides until you arrive at the casting office on the day of the audition? What do you do? Well, you need to bring some stuff with you. A stapler, a highlighter, a pencil, and the stiffener if you want to use that. When I'm going in for an audition like that, I'll dig through the pile of sides till I find the freshest copy, and I'll double staple it. I'll put it on the stiffener with my paper clips, highlight my lines, and any kind of notes I want to make, I will put in pencil. That way, after the audition's over, but before I give it to the monitor, I'll erase all of my notes. That way the actor who uses it next will have a pretty clean copy to work from. And here's one more tip. When you're working on your sides, a good thing to start to remember is, when is it time to turn the page, right? Try to remember what the last line for each page is so you can stay with the scene as it's going along. That way, if you're turning the page and suddenly you do need to look down, you're already on the right page, all right? It's just one more thing that you can do as part of your process of learning your lines and making your character choices, okay? So, let's talk about a few do's and don'ts. Now, some of you might be thinking, sides? Who needs sides? I'm going to impress them by memorizing this scene and then doing it without the sides. Let me tell you something, champ. Nobody gets a gold star by their name for memorizing a scene and then doing it without the sides. That's not one of the criteria by which you are being judged at the audition. In fact, if you hop up on stage to do your scene without your script, the director is going to be thinking, I wonder how long we're going to watch this before they ask for a line. All right? Now, you may have memorized this scene backward and forward in your apartment, but on the day of the audition, you're going to be nervous. And as sure as the sun rises in the east, you're going to forget a line. So always audition with this script in your hand. You may never refer to it, you may be word perfect, but at least you'll have it. This lifeline back to the scene. Okay? So now let's quickly recap. Type up the scene, put it in a font size that's easily readable, highlight your lines, print out several copies to work with. When you've got it on the stiffener like this, as you're memorizing it, know what the last line of each page is so you know when to turn the page so you stay in the scene. And just get comfortable with this whole thing in your hand so it doesn't feel like a big distraction. Okay? So, break a leg at your next audition.